Hello and welcome. Over the next 30 minutes, we're going to talk about the challenges faced by India, of course, when you talk about infrastructure. The big trouble with India, of course, is crumbling roads, jammed airports and power blackouts, which could hobble growth. Let me take you through what a few big voices have actually said when we talk about the infrastructure story in India. India is underinvested in infrastructure for 60 years and we are behind what we need by about 10 to 12 years, and this is coming from TV Mohandas Pai, Director of Human Resources for Infosys. Jagdish and Bhagwati, a professor at Columbia University, very clearly said that GDP figure growth would run about 2 percentage points higher if the country had decent roads, railways and powers. So of course that is the big voices and that's what they actually think and make of the India infrastructure story. We've got a very, very power-packed panel who will talk to us about what this means for India. To help me with this discussion, we've got with us Vivek Mehra, Executive Director of PwC, Mr. Maheskar, CMD RB Infra, Subbarao Group CFO GMR, SK Goel, CMD IFCL, who joins us from Delhi, and Vinayak Chatterjee, Chairman, Feedback Ventures. Thanks very much, gentlemen, for joining us today on the show. I'm going to throw this upon all you guests because this is a big question that we all keep asking. We know the big problem. This is going to be the biggest dampener if you talk about the growth story that India is looking at or hoping to achieve. What is the problem?
If you look at some areas where I specialize in, which is taxation, regulatory, etc., the problems are there, but they are minor. I think major issue is on the policy front. Is the government keen to straighten out its policy in order to facilitate people to make a commercial success out of an infrastructure project? If it is mired in risks, the costs go up, people don't want to come in.
Right.
That's the basic issue.
That's the big concern. Vinayak, the infrastructure deficit is so critical that it could actually prevent India from achieving that prosperity that we finally seem to be within the grasp of. So clearly this could be the biggest dampener to India's growth story. What, in your opinion, is going wrong? Because yes, we know what the issue is. We've talked about it for the last few years, but on the ground, the problems still exist.
The point just made, I cannot but wholeheartedly agree that the issues really are on creating the right policy environment that energizes, enthuses and makes it interesting for people to invest in this sector. Now, if you really ask me, the three big policy interventions which I would advocate, one is we need a clear definition of infrastructure. And many of us have argued that there should actually be 5 definitions of infrastructure and not one, and those 5 should include core, social, rural, urban and land intensive. Because we have this rather funny spectacle of anything and everything being defined as infrastructure. In the last budget, the investments in the fertilizer industry got defined for infrastructure benefits. That's clearly unacceptable. The second point is that you need you need a clear and level playing field. So we need completely new legislative architecture for creating truly independent regulatory authorities. That doesn't seem to be happening over many years. And finally, the private sector cannot create projects. It can only respond to projects that the sovereign, the state, bids out, whether it is airports or ports or roads. The government cooks the project, it takes it into a certain shape and then bids it out for private sector participation. So the private sector can't create projects, it can only respond enthusiastically. But what I am really afraid of is there doesn't seem to be sufficient creative energy in the sovereign to be able to constantly create a stream and a larger stream of potentially bankable projects. And I will stop here.
Right. Of course, that's the broader infrastructure sector that we are talking about. So, Subbarao, we've talked about progress not being made. Yes, roads, we haven't really made that progress. But when you talk about airports, there is that progress, right? Would you agree with me?
There are two sides to this. In the last 10 years of the infra journey of India, we have achieved some progress. We have built almost 18,000 kilometers of 4-lane roads. It's not a mean achievement. We created about 4 or 5 world-class airports. That is not a mean achievement. And we set up huge power capacity and transmission. It's not a mean achievement by any standards, but is it adequate or could we have done more? That's where would have. So India demonstrated the capability of building world-class infrastructure, be it roads, be it airports and all this stuff. Given these capabilities, how we could have leveraged in the last 10 years to contribute more to this country? Sure, we could have built at least twice the number of roads that we have built.
NDTV's cricket app, Android and iPhone, fastest scorecard, special analysis and much more. Download free. ndtv.com/apps.